We've got a great program for you today with California State Senator Josh Becker. Let me start by introducing our guest. Senator Josh Becker was elected to the state Senate in November 2020. He represents the residents of California's 13th Senate District, which comprises most of San Mateo County, including the coast side from Pacifica to the Santa Cruz County line, and the northern part of Santa Clara County. He is the author of several bills focused on accelerating California's transition to 100% clean energy and net zero emissions, voter access and justice reforms, and leveraging technology to provide greater economic mobility for all Californians. Senator Becker serves on a range of Senate committees and caucuses, including chair of the Senate Budget Subcommittee on Resources, Environmental Protection, and Energy. Josh earned a JD MBA from Stanford in 1999. He is a 21-year resident of Menlo Park, where he lives with his wife, Jonna, and their two children, Leo and Aaron, and the family dog, Percy. Please join me in welcoming Senator Josh Becker this morning. We can all pretend clap. Welcome, Josh. How are you?
Excellent. Good to see everyone, especially Emmy, who I missed and have not seen for a long time. So wonderful to see you.
It's great to see you, Josh. I follow you with keen interest.
Excellent. Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful.
And we decided to call this a fireside chat. Josh and I are warming our hands by the fire somehow, and we're obviously in the same room, as you can tell. So just wanted to have a conversation, and we'll open it up at the end for questions from the audience if there are any. So
I do have one piece. I have a LA Times interview, one of my bills, and it ends up being next week is the last week for bills to pass Senate committee. So it's a packed week. So I put them off till 9:15, but I'm gonna have to go around 9:15, maybe a couple minutes after. So I apologize. I have to leave a little early.
All right, we'll try and go fast through our questions, and I'll try and wrap up by 9 so we have time for questions. You obviously we've known each other for a couple of decades, and I know how hard you worked to get elected, and it's been now something like 2.5 years in office. I'm curious, how has serving in the Senate lived up to your expectations, and what, if anything, has surprised you from serving?
Sure. Well, thank you. It was a long effort, as you know, Emmy knows, and maybe some others. And I'll never forget when you showed up for that first debate in 2009. Like, what's Joe doing here? Not that many people that I know come to these debates. Anyway, it was wonderful. So it was a long road, and it's been wonderful. I have to say, if anything, has exceeded my expectations. For really 3 reasons. It's just the platform, the size, and the range. The platform of the state of California being the 4th largest economy in the world, if we were to be our own state, means that I get to work on 2 things, really: quality of life issues here on the peninsula, like transportation, housing, education, and then I get to work on issues like climate change, where we can really lead the country and lead the world. And it's a small legislature, means the state Senate's only 40 people. So it's just really easy to get to know people, but then also because the range of issues are so vast, that if you really want to dive deep and lead on an issue, you can do that. And but regardless, even if you have a focus area like climate, certainly one of mine, the range of issues on a daily basis that you get to work on is just incredibly fascinating, and so I've really enjoyed it.
Great. If you follow Josh's social media, you'll see that he spends a ton of time all over the Bay Area, meeting with residents and going to farmers markets and all over the place, listening to concerns. I'm curious, as you travel around, what are the top 3 concerns you've been hearing in recent months from the residents?
Well, I'd say it's some of those same areas. I'd say affordable housing and homelessness, transportation, / traffic and climate.
Those are the big three.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know that we're in Silicon Valley. We're the world leader in technology. Really powers the economic engine here, and it's been a little rough in recent times with major tech companies making decisions to move out of state. Like Oracle and Tesla and HP Enterprise. Massive downsizing. Over 100,000 workers laid off in the past year. How do you feel about the state of Silicon Valley and the tech jobs that drive the economy here? What have you heard? What's going on there?
Well, I need to turn to my friends who are still in technology to really get me the real scoop, because it's easy to get disconnected. I will say a couple things. Number one, I do get concerned. While some of that's overblown in terms of companies leaving, I certainly do get concerned. I think our personal income taxes are at a breaking point, and I do know a lot of folks who have moved. So I do get concerned less on the company side, but at some point, if you do get enough people in one of these other areas like Austin or Miami, then the next entrepreneur could decide to locate there as opposed to bringing her and starting her or his business in California. So I think there's reasons to be concerned. On the other hand, I think it's still incredibly vibrant here, and not just for traditional IT technology, but also for clean technology. Biotechnology is booming in the Bay Area. I'd say that's the one area where I would have said we were always second to the Boston, Cambridge area, but I'm not sure you would say that anymore. I mean, certainly in the northern part of my district, in San Mateo County, it's just, I think there's 10 million square feet of new biotech office space being constructed right now.
Wow.
In the district. So, and that's less, it's cyclical, but less cyclical. And I think in the tech world, we all know that it is cyclical. We just kind of happen to have a 12-year up cycle, but you and I have lived through cycles before. And so we know that it is historically a cyclical business. So I'd say there are reasons for concern, but lots of vibrancy still here. And hopefully some of those people, being laid off to the big tech companies are going to start their own startups. That will be the next big tech companies.
I was actually at a decarbonization event in Palo Alto yesterday, and there were over 100 people there who were essentially being recruited to leave traditional tech jobs and go into, clean climate related jobs. So, you see that trend. We tried clean tech maybe a couple decades ago, and that didn't quite take off. And it seems like it's really happening now. So great. Well, obviously, climate change is one of your top priorities. And I think that Los Altos recently passed some new REACH codes. There's some concern with this recent Berkeley, court ruling around whether or not that can actually be done. But you've introduced and passed many bills related to climate, and I'd be curious to get your take on the state of the climate crisis and your top priorities for the year around climate.
Well, we could spend an hour easily on this, but yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity to be able to lead from my position now in the state of California. And not only, you realize there's legislation, which we'll talk about in a moment. There's the budget side, and I now chair the budget subcommittee that is responsible for all natural resources, all water, all energy. And we're working on a climate bond. And traditionally, these bonds are natural resources. Now, of course, we have to get it done. We have to get it passed. But, we put $500 million in there for grid infrastructure. We put $500 million in there for long duration storage. We put $500 million in there for transmission. And those were all, enormous numbers. But this is on top of a $50 billion multi-year commitment that we made on all of these issues just in just last year. Now, some of this is trying to get pared back, but even where it's getting pared back is getting pared back generally, say 10%. So we're still having, most of those gains. So, but it's really transforming every sector of the economy. So I very much appreciate the leadership of Los Altos, and I've enjoyed being at Greentown Los Altos last year. Just super impressed with the vibrancy. In fact, I have my loaner induction cooktop right now from Greentown Los Altos. We've electrified everything else except for the stove. And so to have represent these cities who are leading in various ways. I'll be at the Progress Seminar tomorrow in San Mateo, which is like a retreat from all the leaders in San Mateo County, speaking about net zero and working on my presentation for that. I'll be speaking to about climate for the again, the group of sort of young leaders up and coming in San Mateo County here in a few hours. But it's really about transforming the entire economy. So that's what I've said. You know what? We're going to be very metrics driven and systematic, looking at where all the emissions are coming from. And we're going to do bills in each of those areas. So transportation, 50%. I have bills this year. I'm really tackling large buildings with just massively important legislation. 5% of our emissions are from buildings over 50,000 square feet. Then, of course, residential, and that's where you've been leading. And I have a lot of legislation there. One was part of our Ought to Be a Law contest I'm happy to talk about, where we're really about trying to stack all the local, regional, and state and federal incentives for people who want to do home electrification, and then other legislation that's been around financing and on-bill financing, that area. But you also have to look at building materials, which are 8% of our emissions. My very first year, we tackled cement. I got a net zero target for cement, and we have a path there. This year, I'm doing agriculture, and I have a bill on cow burps and cow flatulence, because agriculture is 8% of our emissions, and so we have to tackle each aspect of that. So it's really, you have to be really systematic, very focused, very data driven, and that's the opportunity that we have here in California to do it. But it's still a fight every day, and people would probably be surprised about that aspect of it. And even my large buildings bill, I've already had to make two big changes that I did not want to have to make. And so it's just a battle. We're battling my cow bill. I have a carbon removal bill. This would be the bill in the country to establish a long-term predictable market for carbon removal. And it's the only bill that was opposed by the Chamber, the Farm Bureau, the Western States Petroleum, and environmental justice groups together. It's like the only time in history that has happened. And so, it's a battle every day, but it's a tremendously exciting and rewarding battle.
Great. Well, you win the award for pissing off the most people, I guess. So, a really rough year for the election.
I'm also pissing off the CMA, because I'm working with, I have a bill to work with John Cowan at El Camino Health on allowing them to hire doctors directly. So I'm pissing off a lot of people. Yes.
So he has a lot of courage, which is important.
All right, a pretty rough year for the electric grid, and many Los Altos residents, including some of our elected officials, lost power multiple times for 3 or 4 days at a time. I know, Josh, this affected you as well. We ended up opening our home to several friends who had kids who needed to do homework and had no cellular or Wi-Fi access at the time. At the same time, we continue to pass laws and ordinances that increase our dependence on an imperfect electric grid from PG&E, with energy costs rising dramatically in the last couple of years. You serve on the Senate Energy, Utilities, and Communications Committee, and I know a lot of people are interested. What can we do to hold PG&E responsible for improving the reliability of the grid while keeping costs low? Would love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I do have a bill on that as well. Yeah, it just got to a crisis point. I actually tried that my very first year with this bill, SB 68, that was about electric ready homes. So it's better information, better technology, better service. We got the first two parts done, but the utilities succeeded in stripping it, having it. That we've one murky part of our process, the appropriations process, and they succeeded in stripping out the service part. And now it's at a crisis part. So it's about 10 bills this year because it's just such a crisis now where PG&E, I mean, there are a couple issues. I mean, one, it does feel, there were historic storms, right? And we had trees falling and there was things that were just not preventable. But by and large, it did feel like our infrastructure was 1923 as opposed to 2023 sometimes. And so a lot of their resources have gone to wildfires, which is, and I oversee that as well, wildfire safety now. And I get that because the wildfires sparked by their equipment have killed many people and destroyed many towns. And so we do have to focus on that. But we have to focus on their infrastructure here as well. So we're just not as susceptible. I mean, it's horrible here on the coast side. There's literally one line that connects the coast and that got cut. And then they don't even have 911 in those times. And then also in general, I think Pescadero was out for about 8 days. So it's just been a crisis really throughout the district. So we need to improve our infrastructure, but also what they call interconnection. So just in the everyday when people are trying to upgrade their home, like many in Greentown, Los Altos are trying to do, or just when a new hospital is built or new business is built, it's just taking days, weeks, months to get people connected and to get PG&E to come out and do their job. And so I'm taking that one on as well. And I somehow have seemed to come out with an approach that the utilities are not supportive of, but I've got the NRDC and the environmental groups as well as the electrical workers to come together on that one. So that's taking on a lot of big issues, but that's a big one. This whole interconnection issue, because it's just kind of reached crisis proportions, and it's kind of tied into the whole infrastructure issue for PG&E.
Okay, great. Thank you. So you briefly mentioned this contest that you held called Ought to Be a Law, which resulted in SB 755. I thought this was a really interesting concept, and I'm sure you got, aside from the one that won, I'm sure there are a bunch of other great ideas. Can you talk more about the idea behind this contest and the winning idea that you briefly mentioned earlier?
Yeah, well, informally, this happens anyway. So, for example, one of my big bills last year came through talking to Daniel Yost, who was lawyer at work, but he also was mayor of Woodside for a while. And one of the people that got me involved had me introduced me to Emmy many years ago, Daniel Yost and Andrew Burns. And so I was talking to Daniel, one of the ideas was to have our state government lead and have our state government get to net zero 10 years ahead of the rest of the state, which means all of our fleet, all of our buildings, all of our electricity, which are all massive. And I ended up talking about that in Glasgow at the climate change talks in COP26. And it really took off. And then I came back and I had to do it. And some of my colleagues weren't happy that, I talked about it there without talking to them first. So anyway, I had to do it. But a lot of work to socialize it and talk to all my colleagues. And we ultimately got that one passed and signed by the governor last year. So that was super exciting. And so we decided to formalize that. And senators, Simidian had and Senator Hill themselves had variations of this, and so I was really excited to do it. And so yeah, we did get a lot of interesting ideas, and the one we ended up picking, I kind of referred to earlier, because for anyone who has electrified their home, there are lots of incentives now. There's again state incentives. There are now lots of federal incentives that are, and then oftentimes, sometimes local incentives too, either through Silicon Valley Clean Energy or maybe possibly through the city. But it's incredibly confusing. I mean, when I did it, and then people are calling you weeks later, oh, I have to do an inspection for you to get your refund for the rebate. I'm like, what is this? And so there's a woman who's actually a Knight Hennessy Scholar, which is a new Stanford program that it's sort of like, it's a little bit like the Rhodes Scholarship in a way, where you get this scholarship and you're going to traditional programs at Stanford. And anyway, so she ended up kind of coming up with this idea, and she had of stacking all the incentives, and she'd actually intern in part for the CPUC and the CC. So she kind of knew the wonky world of this whole area. And so we're working with her to create a one-stop shop. And I think if it works, it's going to be really exciting. And so we picked that one because it was very much in line with my themes of building decarbonization and in a way of really speeding it up. And again, the IRA in general, one of my goals is to make sure California gets every dollar it can, but also a lot of these programs are uncapped. And so they estimated the cost, assuming say 20% of people would sign up for a program, but if 50% of people sign up, that works too. So we really got to get this out there.
Okay, great. Yeah, sounds like a great idea. And it is super confusing, having been through some of that. So one-stop shop sounds like a great idea. I'm just gonna turn to one final question here around crime. So, it seems that crime has been getting worse in the Bay Area. Some of the stats don't necessarily support it, but at least we at least hear about it more, with car break-ins and catalytic converters getting stolen and burglaries. So what can you do at the state level to help, and what best practices have you seen in other Bay Area cities to help deter crime?
Yeah, well, it's a huge issue, and I did do actually I did a forum, and some of the folks, we had some crime victims from, I believe from Los Altos Hills, in that, because I feel like there's a lot of pointing of fingers where, the cops will say the DAs won't prosecute, and the DAs say, well, the cops don't want to bring misdemeanors, and then people will both will point at Sacramento and say, well, Sacramento's changed these laws, and just feel like there's a lot of finger pointing. And so I think it's really important to get everyone together and figure out, okay, together, what are we going to do? Because I think what really infuriates people is this notion of sort of just repeat offenders, right? If this notion of like, hey, okay, someone did this, and then they're back on the street tomorrow, and then they're going to do it again. And so, I think it's possible, and I think California, we've managed to do it, where you have both over incarceration, where we have people serving way too long life sentences, 3 times as many people serving life sentences as Texas, even though we're only 25% bigger. As a percentage of people in our jails serving life sentences, we have 30%. The next biggest is Mississippi at 10%. So locking people up way too long. At the same time, we've lost some of that basic accountability, where the notion of, okay, someone commits a crime, we need some kind of punishment there that we can either, there's other consequences, or it's an incentive to get them into some kind of diversion, right? And a lot of this is also tied both to drug addiction and mental health, and we need to step up our efforts in those areas as well. And I feel like we are doing that now, but it's sort of a multi-year effort. So anyway, so those are some of the big picture factors. But I have seen things like automatic license plate readers, and I know you sort of have a contract. I think that maybe looking at reviewing that contract, but it does seem like that has helped in a number of cities. And then, like I said, just that kind of close coordination, so we can just make sure we get the city leadership and the police and the DAs, kind of all on the same page. So it's not like a passing the buck situation.
Got it. Yeah, just the council is considering ALPRs right now, so it hasn't happened yet, but I think it's on the docket for the coming month or so.
Yeah, and I have heard good things about that in other cities.
Great. Well, I want to make sure there's time for a few questions, but any closing thoughts or remarks before we open it up?
No, I appreciate this. And, again, I come previous from running Full Circle for 20 years, which was a nonprofit group where we got people together and we tried to think about how we could, move the needle in environment, education, as well as housing and economic opportunity. And so I appreciate all the work that's done philanthropically in this area. And I know people spend so much time in philanthropic efforts that are making our region better. And I really appreciate that.
All right. Well, let's open it up for questions. If you if you have a question, please raise your hand, and we'll take you in order. We'll start out with Sue Russell.
Yeah, I'm wondering, are you optimistic about any housing bills being passed, like Yes in God's Backyard or anything else this year?
I think that has a good chance to pass. As you know, you may know some of these housing bills have gotten caught up in politics between the building trades, but I think that one has a lot of momentum. It's a priority bill we're going to vote on it as a priority bill for the Jewish caucus. So I'm now both vice chair of the Jewish caucus. I'm also vice chair of the Bay Area caucus. So I get a regional lens. So that's exciting. I have a bill that one of the bills I'm most excited about, which is a bill to speed up the building of these modular relocatable units. So if we have a piece of land that maybe a city might use down the road, but it's going to be vacant for 3 or 5 years, we can put that, we can use that land and build these modular relocatable units. And we have 50% of the unsheltered homeless in the country, and we have to get everyone indoors. And I think we can scale these up very quickly. And so I'm really excited about that bill. But yeah, I think the Yes in God's Backyard can pass and can be a part of it, and some other things as well. Yeah.
Great. Marie, do you have a question?
I do. Is it true that there's a law requiring that jurisdictions submit an after-action report after they've declared an emergency, such as was done during COVID? And if so, which jurisdictions are required to comply?
I don't know. I'm going to turn that over to Alex. Probably doesn't know the answer either. But I think that's the kind of question we can take back and get you an answer.
Marie, I do not know, but I'll put my contact information in the chat, and if you want to drop me a line, I'll start looking for an answer.
Thank you.
All right. We have a light question load today. Anybody else before we let Josh go? I know he's got an interview he's got to get to, but going once. Oh, okay. Claire, go ahead.
Yes, Josh, I'm not sure if this is actually something you can answer, but considering all the problems with power outages and so on that you were talking about earlier, and you were talking about the several issues that we have to resolve with PG&E, I was wondering, I mean, maybe I don't know if this is the answer, but or a problem to address, but I was thinking that maybe it's because they just don't have enough workers who can get out and cover all of these areas. And how do we get more workers? I'm thinking, I mean, I'm a sort of a community college kind of knowledge person, and would it help if there were like more of a focus or more of a impetus to have men and women who have no interest in tech as tech, but an interest like work with their hands,
Yeah.
kind of thing, and programs that could help them with that, also getting some college credits.
No, that's a really great point. You really put your finger on something. There is a lack of workers here, and so actually that's why for my bill this year, I'm actually been partnered with the electrical workers, because they'll hire more people, they'll get more apprentices, they'll get more people into their trades as long as they know that the work's going to be there. And so it kind of gets into the whole politics of utility funding and balancing accounts and all these things, but I'm sort of in the middle of that right now. But I think you're absolutely right. So that's one of the reasons I'm actually partnering with the electrical workers, the IBW, on my legislation, and then also working with Mark Berman. He has a bill that I'll be supporting too, to get more of these classes going, at the community college and CSU level, because there aren't that many of them. And I've heard from Palo Alto all the time, they have electrical, sort of related roles that they just can't fill in the city. So I think you're right. And certainly in the trades, those are excellent jobs. And so I am tackling that piece of it. It's a really important point.
Thank you. Thank you. Mhm.
Great. Well, Josh, I think we're going to let you go. And then if everyone can stick around for 1 minute, I just have a quick announcement about our next program. But thank you so much, Josh, for joining us today. We'll get you off to your interview.
Yeah, well, this is fun to do. It's fun to engage and see all of you. Some of you I've not seen for a while, and I really appreciate it. And we'll look forward to continuing the discussion.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. And thank you, Alex, for helping to organize. We really appreciate it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So you feel free to sign off. And just a quick note on our upcoming programs. We're going to be taking a break on May 5th. So our next meeting for the Community Coalition will be on Friday, May 19th, 8:30 a.m. We're going to have a discussion on emergency preparedness with Captain Katie Kraus. It should be a great discussion. If you'd like to be added to the LACC mailing list, please send an email to info@losaltoscommunitycoalition.org. I think Kim just posted it in the chat. And thank you, as always, to the Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation for providing LACC with financial and in-kind support. That's it for today. We'll see you all in 4 weeks. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Beer stroll tonight, downtown Los Altos. St. Patty's Day rescheduling, so don't forget. Take care, everyone.